Scotland's motorways, they're the arteries of the country, right? We all use them. But when something goes wrong at 70 miles an hour, well, the consequences can be incredibly serious. So in this driver's guide, we're going to break down exactly how to navigate the aftermath of a motorway accident, from those first critical moments at the scene to the complexities of making a legal claim. Let's get right into it. First, let's just take a moment to really understand the stakes here. A car traveling at 70 miles per hour doesn't just feel faster. It has 5 times the kinetic energy of a car moving at 30. Think about that. 5 times the destructive force. It's exactly why motorway accidents so often lead to catastrophic injuries, and why the legal claims that follow are so incredibly complex. The physics simply don't lie. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by looking at why Scotland's motorways are such a unique risk environment. Then we'll decode the specific rules of the road and look at the most common types of crashes. From there, we'll see how the evidence is gathered, cover the absolute must-do steps after an accident, and finally, we'll walk through the legal journey itself. All right, Section 1, Scotland's high-stakes highways. Let's really dig into why a road like the M8 or the M74 isn't just a faster version of a normal road. It's a completely different beast altogether. And really, this slide sums it up perfectly. It's this perfect storm of risk. It's not just the speed. Picture the M8 during rush hour. You've got that incredible speed combined with massive amounts of traffic, all packed into 3 or 4 lanes. It's that exact combination that means one tiny mistake can trigger a devastating chain reaction, making any legal claim that follows so much more demanding. Moving on to Section 2, decoding the motorway rules. You know, your first line of defense, both for keeping safe and for any potential legal dispute, is truly understanding that motorways have their own unique set of regulations. And this comparison just illustrates the differences so clearly. On a motorway, the limit is 70, not 30 or 40. You must keep to the left unless you are actively overtaking. And stopping in a live lane, it is absolutely forbidden unless it's a genuine emergency. This super strict set of rules is all designed for high-speed safety. And you guessed it, breaking them is very often the root cause of a collision. And there are even more specifics that every single driver needs to know. You see those overhead gantry signs with speed limits on them? Yeah, those aren't suggestions. They are mandatory, legally binding limits. And middle lane hogging? It's not just annoying, it's an actual offense. An undertaking, passing someone on the left, is a huge red flag for negligence if an accident happens. These aren't just bad habits, they are legally significant actions. So let's move on to Section 3 and see how breaking these rules often leads to the most common types of motorway collisions. Understanding the dynamics of these crashes is absolutely key to figuring out who's at fault. The most common, and often most serious, is the rear-end collision chain. This is that domino effect we're all terrified of. One car hits another from behind, and that sets off a cascade. One impact quickly turns into a multi-car pileup with twisted metal and, all too often, devastating injuries. So, who's responsible for all that chaos? Well, generally speaking, the driver who caused that very first impact carries the main liability. But it doesn't always stop there. Any drivers behind them who are following too closely to stop in time, well, they can also be found liable for their part in the chain reaction. It becomes a really complex web of responsibility. And then, of course, you have lane change accidents. This is the absolute classic he said, she said scenario. One driver swears the other drifted into their lane, the other driver says the exact opposite. Without proof, it's a total stalemate. This is where objective evidence becomes everything. We also see a ton of other high-risk situations. You've got drivers causing chaos by merging incorrectly at junctions, accidents involving HGVs, heavy goods vehicles, which are almost always more serious because of their sheer size and weight, and of course, roadwork zones, where narrow lanes and sudden changes create their own unique set of dangers. This brings us perfectly to Section 4, the evidence never lies. So after the chaos and confusion of a crash, how is a case actually built? How is the truth really pieced back together? So how is that truth uncovered? Well, in the high-tech environment of a modern motorway, there are actually a lot more clues than you might think. Just look at all these potential sources of truth. You've got Traffic Scotland's own CCTV network, giving a bird's-eye view. There are detailed police reports with forensic analysis. Dashcams from other cars can act as vital, impartial witnesses. And get this, many modern cars now have their own black box recorders that log speed and braking data right up to the moment of impact. But listen, this is probably the single most critical takeaway from this entire guide, so please pay close attention. That official CCTV footage from Traffic Scotland, it is not stored forever. In fact, the window to act is incredibly short. A solicitor has to make an urgent, formal request to preserve it, or that vital, game-changing evidence could be gone for good.
Okay, Section 5. After an accident, your first moves. This is the most practical, nuts and bolts part of our explainer. What you absolutely must do in those terrifying moments right after a collision.
Let's walk through this together. First, your life is the absolute priority. If you possibly can, get your car to the hard shoulder. And this is crucial. Exit your car from the left side only, away from the traffic, and get yourself behind the safety barrier. Then call 999 immediately. Try to know your location, the motorway number and the nearest junction marker. If you have a dashcam, save that footage. And finally, get legal advice as quickly as you can to start preserving all that time-sensitive evidence we just talked about. And that brings us to our final section, navigating your legal claim. Because the journey doesn't end at the side of the road, in so many ways, it's really just beginning. So why is specialist help so incredibly important here? Well, it's because these are almost never simple claims. You're often dealing with multiple drivers, a really complex web of evidence from CCTV to vehicle data, and sadly, all too often, catastrophic, life-changing injuries. It is a high-stakes legal environment that really demands very specific expertise. And you know, this quote from the source material just sums it all up perfectly. On a motorway accident claim, as on a motorway itself, speed and the right approach matter enormously. Acting decisively right from the very beginning can make all the difference in the world. So, we'll leave you with this question to think about. Having seen the risks, the rules, and the right steps to take, after a motorway accident, are you prepared to make the right moves? Because in that critical moment, having this knowledge isn't just power, it's your best possible protection. Drive safe out there.